never forget when I was in grad school and I was in a reproductive biology lab doing all this stuff, and my wife and I were newly married. You'll see where I'm going. We were at our church, and somebody was going to have a baby, and so I was asked to pray for them, and I prayed for successful and uneventful parturition. Everybody just looks at me like, "What are you talking about?" Like, that's what it is, parturition. From initiation to delivery of the baby. That is the whole process, parturition. All right, so what causes this initiation? There's no single cause for parturition initiation, but definitely this estrogen to progesterone ratio is one of the factors that allows labor and delivery. Tell me why. What does estrogen do? Smooth muscle contraction. What does progesterone do? Inhibits smooth muscle contraction. So if you get more promoter of smooth muscle contraction and less inhibitor, the conditions are right. They don't initiate it, but they allow the conditions to be there for the magic hormone that's going to induce parturition. Oxytocin. A 9-amino acid, very simple neuropeptide. Oxytocin is made by what organ in the body? The neurohypophysis, the posterior pituitary. It's one of the two that's made by that structure. So it's made in the hypothalamus, moved via axonal streaming to the posterior pituitary where it's released. Oxytocin is a potent smooth muscle contractor. 100 years ago, if a woman went into premature labor, in other words, uterine contractions, 7 months into her pregnancy, 6 months into her pregnancy, physicians would prescribe alcohol. A fifth of Jack Daniels. Take it. Sounds preposterous, but it works beautiful. Why? Well, let's go back to our kidney lectures. What do you know about alcohol's effect on antidiuretic hormone? Inhibits it. Alcohol, indeed, is an inhibitor of the posterior pituitary. It shuts down the posterior pituitary. So, there's 2 cell types in the posterior pituitary. One of them is making ADH, so alcohol causes you to urinate a lot. And in women, it will shut down oxytocin production. It also causes fetal alcohol syndrome. We figured that out. It took until the early 1900s to figure that out. But in the 1800s, this is what was used, and it worked beautiful. Today we do have some smooth muscle relaxers that are used, as well as if a woman goes to preterm labor, it's bed rest. Don't get up now. Let me explain why that is. Here's the progression of childbirth. This is the uterus, and as baby's head comes into this upper region of the vagina, lower region of the uterus, the cervix, as baby's head stretches the cervix, it causes a neural release of oxytocin. Cervix stretches, oxytocin is produced. This oxytocin causes the myometrial layer to contract. Let's think about this really quick. Oxytocin has been made, put into the bloodstream. It goes and it causes myometrium to contract. What happens to baby? Push down. Guess what happens to the cervix? Stretches. Guess what happens next? Oxytocin is made. Now, this begins, we have these an hour or 45 minutes between contractions. What's that about? Well, initially we get a little contraction, baby's head goes down a little bit, stretches a little bit more oxytocin. This keeps progressing until the entire cervix is stretched, especially if the amniotic sac is broken and we have the amniotic fluid that leaves. Then baby doesn't have a fluid cushion anymore. The head goes down, stretches the cervix, bolus of oxytocin comes out, and this is a positive feedback loop that leads to the baby being delivered. So the reason that contractions always begin far apart and end up constant is because of this progressive stretching and oxytocin phenomenon. There's a trend going on, especially in the United States, and that is to women inducing their labor. Now, any OBGYN physician, whenever a couple nears term, the couple will be told, look, there's a couple of things that if you're ready to go to the hospital, a couple of things that will probably help you with that process. Number one, have sex. Prostaglandin, smooth muscle contractor, begins the process. Prostaglandin and semen, and stretching of the cervix. One initiating factor. The other one is a brisk walk. And I live on the green belt. I laugh every time I say, you know this one out there, husband falling behind, she's going down there, like, brisk walk. She's trying to get head down low enough to initiate this beginning of labor and delivery, beginning of parturition. The troubling factor is, if we look at the percent of artificially induced labor, in other words, a woman saying, you know what, I'd like to have my baby next Tuesday morning. Sounds preposterous. I hope it's preposterous sounding to you. But when we look at 30% of U.S. women today are artificially inducing their labor and delivery. It's troubling to me because the way that it's artificially induced is with a synthetic hormone. Synthetic hormone called Pitocin. Pitocin is FDA approved. It is a lab-generated oxytocin congener. What we don't know is exactly what receptors the Pitocin is acting on, if they're exactly the same as oxytocin. And I just put this figure here to show you this is increasing. And I just looked up on the CDC's website, the Center for Disease Control website, and they said this year is the first year that we started to see a decrease, finally, in the number of induced labors.
Does that also include? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Does that also include like some? Yeah, medical.
Definitely, and so yeah, I mean this would be the full term, and most of the time, if a woman's going to have it for medical reasons, she's going to have a C-section, and that's not going to be induced this way. That's going to be having a surgery. So it does include that, but I'd say it's less than 1%.
What's the difference in post-term and late term?
Yeah. It has to do with the weeks. So.
Oh, wait, it says at the bottom. Never mind. I should just read.
Yeah. It's just the weeks, the number of weeks after expected. Okay. Here's the reason I'm concerned. Check out this abstract. Affiliative behavior and social bonding. Social relationships are essential for maintaining human mental health, yet little is known about the brain's mechanisms involved in development and maintenance of social bonds. Animal models are powerful tools for investigating the neurobiological mechanisms, regulating the cognitive processes leading to the development of social relationships, potentially extending our understanding of human condition. In this review, we discussed the roles of the neuropeptides, oxytocin and vasopressin. Okay? Anytime you have oxytocin come out, you're also going to have ADH come out just because of the peptides are stimulated in the regulation of social bonding as well as the related social behaviors culminating in the formation of social relations in animal models. The formation of social bonds is a hierarchical process involving motivation and approach, social stimuli, formation of social memories, and social attachment. Oxytocin and vasopressin have been implicated in each of these processes. These peptides facilitate social affiliation and parental nurturing behavior. Let me stop right there. In model animal species, like, let's say, sheep, I can take, let's say I have a lamb just born. The mom is bonded with that lamb. She'll protect that lamb with anything. The other sheep around, ignore that lamb. Unless you give another female an injection of oxytocin and introduce this lamb, and all of a sudden, it's mine. Affiliative bonding via a neurohormone that's causing memories, circuitry, causing an affiliation behavior. The same thing is true. There's so many different good animal models of this. I don't have time to tell you, but there are monogamous lemurs and promiscuous lemurs. They're different species. The difference, oxytocin. The monogamous ones have a bolus of oxytocin that's released. Affiliation. That's a permanent affiliation. If you block that, they become promiscuous. It's oxytocin. You can see why it's called the love hormone. It is the hormone associated with affiliation. A little bit concerned because indeed Pitocin, we don't know about the effects of Pitocin. What we do know from some animal models. This is a good one. Is if we take rats and we expose them to the vehicle Pitocin or oxytocin, the black, when they're born, and we look at them when they're adolescents, and we let them have free access to beer. I kid you not. All right, this or water. There's no difference in water consumption, but those exposed to oxytocin have less beer consumption than those exposed to Pitocin. Something in the brain is being wired there that's leading to, and the implications are obvious, that's leading to more alcohol. This is a PLOS1 article. Adolescent oxytocin exposure causes persistent reductions in anxiety and alcohol consumption. Okay, so the main hormone. Tell me the three hormones that are associated with parturition and what's their role? Progesterone, what's its role? Inhibits myometrial contraction. Estradiol promotes smooth muscle contraction. But what is the initiator of smooth muscle contraction? Oxytocin. Potent. Okay. Let's talk about. Let's transition into lactation. Obviously, one of the diagnostic characteristics of mammals is a mammary gland. You might have heard in 8th grade or something, it was milk production, which is incorrect. Birds can make milk in their crop. Birds, pigeons, their crop can induce milk production. They feed it their offspring. So milk production is not a mammalian characteristic, but mammary glands are. What am I talking about when I talk about a mammary gland? Well, two different main types of tissue, both connective tissue and an epithelial tissue. The epithelial tissue are parenchymal. They're either glandular, those that are making the milk, myoepithelial, those cells that are contracting. They have smooth muscle contraction of capacity, and ductal, just forming a delivery duct. Those are the three types of epithelial cells. And then we have some supportive tissue, the connective tissue, the stromal tissue it's called. And that would be either adipose tissue or fibroblasts. The structure of these is shown right here. very similar conceptually to when we talked about the lungs. We had these alveoli in the lungs, the blind ending sacs. We have these alveoli in the mammary gland. These alveoli, this would be where the glandular epithelial cell is that's going to make the milk and deliver it via ducts. So here's your myoepithelial cells on the outside of the glandular epithelial cells. These are what's going to secrete your milk into the ducts. It's going to lead out. All of these ducts lead to the nipple, and then milk is able to be expelled. So, but how? Well, 3 stages of mammary gland production. Embryonic occurs in the first trimester of female. That's when the ducts form. You have that ductal epithelial cell. We have the fat pad deposition that begins early. So the stromal tissue, adipose tissue is laid down. This is all promoted because of the role of estrogen in the embryonic female. Remember, we have estrogen production prior to birth and in a female, and that's helping form the early breast. At puberty, so we have a consummate rise in GRH, leading to a consummate rise in FSH, leading to a consummate rise in estradiol. So that's what happens at puberty in a female. I talked about that earlier. We talked about puberty initiation. We have estradiol, 17 beta, that leads to much more adipose tissue in the fat pads. Adiposity in the fat pads goes up. This is actually when, if you remember, I was talking about puberty and precocious puberty. The way that puberty is defined in a female has to do with Tanner staging. Tanner stage, this is all based on fat pad deposition. The glandular epithelium forms now. So we've already got the ducts that are there. Now we have the glandular epithelium that differentiate as a result of estradiol. But they don't get fully mature until pregnancy. It has to do with the amount of estrogen that's made. If you notice, the concentrations of estrogen in a pregnant woman are astronomically higher than in a non-pregnant woman. And so that's the main difference, is the glandular epithelium fully differentiates at pregnancy. So, final differentiation of the glandular epithelial cells. Final differentiation of the glandular epithelial cells as a result of the really high levels of estrogen and progesterone. I can't talk about mammary glands without just briefly mentioning, and I can have a whole lecture on breast cancer, the number one cancer associated with women. There are a lot of correlations, not causation, but correlations with breast cancer incidence. Let me go through several of those correlations. One of the predictive variables in if a woman's going to have breast cancer or not has to do with diet. Increased amount of fat in a diet will predispose a woman to breast cancer, which is one of the reasons that in the U.S. we have a higher incidence than other countries. What's this about? Well, tell you what, I'll let you figure it out. Let me go through the other correlations. Then we'll try to tie them together. Women exposed to organochlorine pesticides. Those are the ones I talked about earlier in the semester, like DDT, that are internationally banned now. And the third correlation that's been made with breast cancer incidence and environmental, I'm not talking about work, I'm not talking about a genetic predisposition. What I'm talking about is the environmental case. Every disease has a genetic and an environmental induction. Every disease. Most of the environmental have epigenetic effects, but the genetic predisposition kind of sets the table for the disease to come later on. So what I'm talking about are the environmental correlations now. The last one I want to talk about is estrogen replacement therapy. After menopause, estrogen levels plummet, and as a result, many women go on estrogen replacement therapy. This is correlated with a higher incidence of breast cancer. What's the link between all three of those things? Cholesterol is a precursor for all steroid hormones, including estrogens. Organochlorines, and BPA is also in this. BPA exposure is correlated with breast cancer, synthetic estrogen. Estrogen replacement estrogen. In other words, estrogen exposure, estrogen's exposure, either synthetic or natural, are associated with breast cancer correlation. Indeed, one of the most common treatments for breast cancer is a drug called tamoxifen, a potent anti-estrogen that will stop the breast cancer tumor. Okay, there's a lot more we can talk about with that, but I need to move on to how the milk is made and delivered. The manufacturing and delivery of milk is termed lactation. And it is 2 steps. And I want to make sure you know the distinction between these 2 steps. The first is the making of the milk. It's called milk secretion. What cells are going to be responsible for this? Glandular epithelial cells that line the alveoli. That's the cells that are going to make the milk and put it in the alveoli. But that's just keeping it in the mammary gland. The second set of cells that are really involved in it are the myoepithelial cells here. We're not in the uterus, we're in the mammary gland. And they're going to move the milk through the ducts to the nipple. Milk removal is the second process. 2 different hormones are associated with this. Let me go ahead and cut to the chase, and then I'll describe it. Prolactin is milk secretion. Pro, positive, lactin, milk. Prolactin stimulates the glandular epithelial cells to make the milk. Oxytocin is milk removal. We've already talked about oxytocin today. What did oxytocin do with parturition?
Bonding. Contraction.
Contraction. Guess what it does? Contraction. Oxytocin is a smooth muscle contractor, also a myoepithelial contractor. Let's look at the hormones that are associated with lactation. So what we're looking at here is weeks after parturition. Again, don't get lost in the big words. What does parturition mean? Labor, delivery, baby's born now. Week after parturition, notice what happens to estrogen and progesterone at childbirth. Now, let's explain that. Why do we have a plummeting of estrogen and progesterone? Well, what was the source of it? What was making estrogen and progesterone? The placenta. And at childbirth, the placenta is delivered. The placenta, baby comes out, umbilical cord comes out, and placenta comes out. Placenta is delivered. If all the placenta is not delivered, it can lead to infections. This removal of the placenta is removal of the organ that's making estrogen and progesterone. So now, let's think about it. There's no follicle that's been recruited because the negative feedback has kept it from being recruited. There's no placenta anymore. There's no corpus luteum. It degenerates. There's no source of estrogen or progesterone. As a result, these bottom out. At the same time, we have prolactin that's being made. And prolactin is made, this is actually not a good figure because it's showing you these spikes. These spikes would happen every day, every time baby nurses. Prolactin is made every time baby nurses. Now, prolactin is made by the anterior pituitary. And it's made in response to, this is the one weird anterior pituitary hormone, because dopamine inhibits it normally. Dopamine stops prolactin. So what happens when mom, and I'll show you a figure that shows you this in a minute, when mom is holding her infant, dopamine levels go away in this particular region of the brain. Without dopamine, prolactin then is made. So it's a little opposite of, you don't induce prolactin production. You get rid of the inhibitor. Let's follow that. Now, I've given you this handout. When baby nurses, a neuron goes into the spinal cord and inhibits dopamine release from that arcuate nucleus. Now, this arcuate nucleus is right up here. So this is the anterior pituitary that normally is making dopamine, which goes through the hypothalamic, hypophyseal portal vein down to the anterior pituitary and inhibits prolactin. Now, when baby nurses, dopamine levels go away, not existent anymore, and as a result, prolactin is stimulated. Prolactin is released into the bloodstream. It goes to the mammary gland. The glandular epithelium now makes milk. So, estrogen and progesterone during pregnancy were inhibiting glandular epithelium production of milk. Now there's no estrogen and progesterone anymore, and we have prolactin, which makes milk. When does this happen? Every time baby nurses. There's a spike of prolactin. How in the world can a woman that has quadruplets have enough to feed all of the babies? Well, it's a supply and demand phenomenon. The more nursing, the more milk production. A woman does not run out of milk. Milk is made every time the baby's nursing. So I don't care if a woman's got 7 triplets, so you're going to make enough milk. Because this is a supply and demand phenomenon. More prolactin, you have prolactin surge every time nursing happens. Okay, so that's just the making of the milk. That's not the delivery, though. The delivery of the milk is a neurological phenomenon. It is it's a surge of oxytocin. Now, you know my wife, so I can tell a story on her. Right. If you do ever be my wife, never repeat this, all right? Our first child, who's your age, I remember sitting in Gainesville Hospital, and my son is born. He's born on a Friday night, which, let me just go ahead and tell you, it's not a good time to have a child because the weekend crew comes in, and you don't have a lactation specialist there. So, son's born, I'm like, that's production stuff, easing my wife. I'm a physiologist, what I do. My wife's obviously very nervous and just distraught, and she's not going to be able to feed. I'm like, milk, prolactin, don't worry about it,
Prolactin! Prolactin! Just keep saying it.
Very comforting.
My son was born premature. He was a little jaundiced. We go home. He's not eating good at all. And my wife's like, enough milk. That makes enough milk. Come on, we end up having to go back to the hospital on Monday. And the lactation specialist comes in, this hospital room. She comes in the room, and first thing she does, I'm sitting there watching a football game or something, and first thing she does is like this. So, turns the lights off. She walks in, she goes and closes the blinds. She, sort of, you might sit over there, kind of relegated to behind the little curtain, Miss Crane, what you do is bring some crystals out. You're going to like burn the incense or what's going on here, She falling on your head, and all of a sudden I hear my son is eating over there. I'm like, days I've been saying, come on, prolactin, it's good. What I, in retrospect, realized is my wife was stressed, and as a result, her hypothalamus was receiving stimuli that was inhibiting the posterior pituitary. The anterior pituitary is not really emotionally regulated. It's a supply and demand. The posterior pituitary is. It's relieving all the sensory stimulation, and so indeed, it's influenced by environment. And after my wife was calm and, relaxed, and then, no problem, oxytocin, surge, milk delivered. My wife, she had engorgement. She had all the milk. It was produced. It just couldn't be delivered because of no oxytocin, a neurological phenomenon. That's what you see right here. Neurons from the spinal cord also stimulate production and release of oxytocin. Oxytocin is released in the posterior pituitary and in the systemic blood where it makes its way to the breast and the myoepithelial cells contract. This is also the reason that women, when they've just had their baby, go to Target, hear another baby crying, and all of a sudden they're delivering milk. They have to get some pads for that, to keep, because they're going to deliver milk. It's a neurological, they can see a picture of their baby and deliver milk. Emotional, it's a neurological phenomenon. Really cool. So what's this milk do? Well, the first milk that's produced is called colostrum. This colostrum has a lot of antibodies in it. If you think about this, what we've got is it's amazing food for babies. Let's think about macromolecules from the beginning of the semester. What are the 3 types of food we need to make ATP? 3 types. Carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. Guess what milk has in it? Fat, carbohydrates, and proteins. It also has specific immune function. Antibodies are delivered, as well as macrophages.
What did you say the first was called?
Colostrum, C-O-L-O-S-T-R-U-M.
Question, Dr.
Yep.
Frank. So the antibodies have like much effect on the baby because I know they're made of like proteins, but like once they eat it, wouldn't that just get digested?
Not early on. The digestive enzymes are not being made this early. It's the whole reason for. I mean, why can't babies eat hot dogs? I mean, you know. The pancreatic and center cells are not capable yet of making those digestive enzymes. Great question. They're able to be taken up. It's an endocytosis event, different digestive process that goes on in the duodenum. One thing I forgot to mention is one other role of prolactin.
Oh, we just messed up my entire notes.
Tell you what, let me draw it.
There's a picture. Okay, great.
Let me draw a little sketch to summarize everything we've been talking about here. We got the hypothalamus. The anterior pituitary. Now, normally, dopamine is being made, and in the case of lactation, it's actually called prolactin inhibitory hormone. You'll see your book refer to PIH, prolactin inhibitory hormone. It's nothing but dopamine. We've talked about dopamine before. What is dopamine most associated with in the brain? Happiness. Reward limbic system, reward center. It's also associated with Parkinson's disease, inhibiting movement. So it's a stimulator in parts of our brain. It's a inhibit movement, and here it's inhibiting prolactin. It's almost like we got a limited number of tools in our toolbox. And they're used. What?
Sorry, what's the advantage to that? Like, is it just when you're done nursing is when the dopamine surge comes back
Exactly.
up?
Yeah, dopamine surge. And it's a very low surge, and it's the neurons right there. Whenever you're not nursing, dopamine then will inhibit it. This prolactin does 2 major things. We've already talked about one. What does it do? Causes those, what kind of cells? Glandular epithelial cells to make and manufacture the milk. Does it cause the milk to be released at the nipple? No. Not at all. Stays in the alveoli. Stays there. Glandular epithelial cells make milk according to prolactin. The other thing prolactin does, though, is it inhibits GnRH production. It stops the hypothalamus from making GnRH. I want to unpack this really quick. Let's turn our minds to female reproductive system. What does GnRH do?
Production of
LH and FSH. What does FSH do? Stimulates follicles.
Yeah, I was going to say.
That's exactly what it is. It stimulates those follicles to go from primordial follicles to mature follicles. Therefore, we can have a new egg coming out. Okay. When a woman is breastfeeding, she's making prolactin. What's happening in her ovary?
Nothing.
Nothing. She's not going to get pregnant. It takes a year, 2 years. She's not on any birth. She is on birth control. Lactation. Breastfeeding shuts down the recruitment of a new egg for fertilization. This is adaptive. This is evolutionarily adaptive. Because you've got an offspring. You don't want to have another one that you don't have resources to provide for. Here's the tie-in. When I was a kid, it was viewed as barbaric to breastfeed your offspring. I mean, coming out of the 1950s and 1960s, that's what animals do. I mean, we are a lab-based society. We can get away from that barbarism of lactation. We can make our own little formula, mix it up in a little bottle, some plastic in there,
He does the plastic.
Heat it
Bring it
up.
to the child. Perfect.
It's microwave.
But literally, it was a faux pas for people in the 1960s and early 70s to breastfeed their offspring. As a result, the interbirth time between kids went to nothing. Women were not lactating, and they were having kids every 9 months. And this became a real medical problem, an issue that had to be addressed. And we addressed it by birth control pills. Birth control pills were the solution to the reduced interbirth time between offspring. That's the reason they were manufactured. They said, all right, tell you what, after you have a kid, I know you're not going to breastfeed, but start taking this pill. And therefore, we're going to have high estrogen and progesterone, so you're still going to have an inhibition of GnRH, so you're not going to recruit another egg. So the reason for birth control pills being invented in the first place had to do with the lack of society, lack of women breastfeeding their baby. Obviously, I'm pro-lactation, and I mean, totally makes sense. Providing the best food, the best immune function, and social bonding, affiliative behavior of offspring. Duh. Well, yeah. Don't write that on your exam.
Should they do it?
Duh.
I don't even need to go into
Do I need to explain?
all
No.
of the
I know it
explanation.
so well.
Don't need to explain it.
Please explain.
Obvious.
Nah.
I was about to make it like a vaccine.
Sick.
All right.
Is she really?
Mm-hmm. That's fun to do. Hi, Caitlin.
Turning now to after birth, the growth of the child. Obviously, boys and girls grow at parallel rates until about early puberty, when estrogen promotes bone growth, and then eventually the high enough estrogen promotes those growth plates to stop undergoing mitosis. So what you see here in 10, 11, 12-year-olds is, the guy's this big, and the girl's this big. It's really funny when you go to the bathroom. I mean,
I remember middle school.
But then what happens is the estrogen promotes long both to cease growing, and the males typically go a little bit further. What are the hormones associated with this besides estrogen? Well, growth hormone is the biggest one. Well-named hormone. Here we see in your book, figure 76.5, if you take litter mates of rats, and you take half of them and inject them with growth hormone, they're going to double the body weight and body size. Growth hormone does three things. Increased protein deposition. This would include actin and myosin, titin, all the muscular proteins. Also a shift to fat metabolism. Growth hormone has a ketogenic effect. In other words, instead of having carbs as your go-to ATP source, now we're going to go to fats preferentially with growth hormone. What that does is it allows carbs to be stored as glycogen, building body mass and energy for fasting times. And again, decreased use of glucose. It's associated with this, I'll make that 2B. It's associated with that ketogenic effect. And the third, and I would say probably one of the biggest effects, has to do with growth hormone making another hormone. Okay. Growth hormone is made by the anterior pituitary. It's made in response to growth hormone releasing hormone. But there's a three-tier system. It involves the liver. The hypothalamus makes growth hormone releasing hormone. Which causes the anterior pituitary to make growth hormone. Which causes the liver to make insulin-like growth factor. This is the hormone that I did my master's on in sea turtles, was seeing if we could use insulin-like growth factor concentrations to determine the age of a sea turtle. Because we know that it's correlated with age, so can we go out and take a blood sample and determine how old a sea turtle is based on their IGF levels? IGF is the #1 growth promoter throughout the body. Just to give you an example, the difference in the three types of poodles. Everybody knows three types of poodles, right? Standard, big guys, miniature, and the toys. I watched the dog show Thanksgiving Day. I love the dog show. I mean, you gotta love the dog show.
I had one of the twins. No,
That's embarrassing.
Ray has two.
The difference in those is nothing more than the liver's capacity to make IGF. That is the difference in the toy, miniature, and standard poodles, is how much IGF they can make. So, same body type, same everything, just how much growth is going to be promoted over time. IGF is a 70 amino acid peptide hormone. I talked about it earlier in the semester when I was talking about insulin. I mentioned that insulin evolved ancestrally, and then what happened in all vertebrates is we had a gene duplication. One gene then stayed stable as insulin. The other gene was modified for a growth promoting effect. When do you make growth hormone? Well, when you're exercising, growth hormone levels surging from your anterior pituitary. And obviously I don't want you to memorize this, but do all animals have growth hormone? Well, again, depends on how you define growth hormone. It's a protein. It's a large peptide. So we can actually do phylogenetic trees of this hormone. Stress does not influence. No, stress doesn't influence it. But there are different genetic predispositions and diseases that have to do with growth hormone.
But diet.
Diet does not, as long as you got enough protein in your diet, but I mean, it takes so little protein.
To do it.
Yeah, to promote it. Yeah.
So if you just exercise and sleep all the time, you're never going to stop growing. Is that basically what I'm hearing?
Yes,
No.
Cody. That's how science works.
That's science. That's science, isn't it?
No, because the effect of the steroid hormones at the end of puberty, stopping it. Let me talk about really quick just 3 disorders. The first one, dwarfism. Decreased growth hormone during childhood. Results in dwarfism. If caught early enough, it can be treated with injections of growth hormone. Can't take a growth hormone pill. Why not? It's a big protein. Second disorder, and there are pictures in your book, by the way, of all this. Second disorder is gigantism. Excessive production of growth hormone prior to puberty. Andre the Giant, dolls, and examples of gigantism. The third condition is called acromegaly, A-C-R-O-M-E-G-A-L-Y. It's a more rare condition, but it's where after puberty we have an increase in growth hormone. At puberty, what happens is the epiphyseal growth plates of the long bones, and don't worry about the details, I'm not going to ask you any about that, but the epiphyseal growth plates of the long bones become ossified. They don't have the capacity to grow anymore. So that's what happens at puberty then. That's why you can't just sleep and exercise and keep growing, because you have the epiphyseal ossification. If you have growth hormone after epiphyseal ossification, you have soft tissues that start to increase in size. That's acromegaly. The head, there's pictures in your book again, lots of excessive tissue formation around the bones that already stopped growing. I've given you this on a handout, just a few terms about growth and development. The neonate, let's just look at that word. Neo, new, natal, newborn, newly born, newly birthed. Just after birth to about 1 month is the neonate. Obviously, that's when the circulatory system is becoming restructured. Talked about that earlier in the semester. That foraminal valley, the ductus arteriosus are all shunted away, changing the circulatory system, changing the respiratory system. We have surfactant that's being made. All this is associated with a neonatal period. Infancy, to 1 year of age, growth rate's going crazy, coordination, ability to focus, vision is improving. Childhood is up to puberty, and puberty is that reproductively functional. So childhood, high growth rate, intellect still developing but not reproductively functional. That's the period of adolescence, that really weird period where reproductively functional but intellectually not there yet. The intellect is maturing. That terminates at, just where you guys are you've peaked out. I mean, you're past it. Your intellect has developed, reproductively functional, and that's where senescence begins.
You haven't had kids yet? So you're never going to have them now. It's you're too old.
Degeneration, and senescence indeed is the loss of function. 2 terms we use for reproductive senescence. I'll give you 3 terms of senescence. This is a bonus. Female reproductive senescence is menopause. No more follicles are available after menopause. Remember, female was born with 1 million of those and now ran out of them all. Andropause is not as common, but andropause is characterized by a reduction in androgen production over time. Loss of skeletal muscle function. Loss of skeletal muscle function is called somatopause. Somatopause is really common in inactive elderly people. It's always in every nursing home. They should have exercise programs. They should get them working because you can slow down somatopause. Main reason for that is growth hormones made every time you exercise, and that's going to reduce the amount of somatopause. Food intake and longevity. One more set of data and I'm done for the semester, I promise. This is actually phenomenal. This is looking at body weight and longevity, how long these mice live on different diets. Let's look at body weight. Now, these are all conspecifics, they're all equivalent mice. Mice fed 40 calories per week of a restricted diet. They grow, but not too big. Mice, 50 calories, 85 calories, and ad libitum. What does the phrase ad libitum mean?
As much as they
As much as you want to. Ad lib. As much as you want to eat. Okay, so we can see they're growing. Now let's relate that to how long they live. Ad libitum, dying early. High calorie, restricted, the most restricted. In other words, longevity is influenced by caloric intake. We've done this for 60 years in humans, because you can go to India in areas that have very restricted caloric intake, and individuals have a longer lifespan, even without modern medicine. What's this about? It's about reactive oxygen metabolites, or ROSs as they're called. Free radicals that are made as a result of metabolism. The mitochondrial free radical theory of aging is reviewed. Only 2 parameters currently correlate with species longevity: the mitochondrial rate of reactive oxygen species production and the degree of fatty acid unsaturation of tissues. Both are low in long-lived animals. Reactive oxygen species are these free radicals that cause DNA base changes. They also change protein structure over time. And the more you eat, the more of those you have. Decrease in ROS formation and oxidative stress takes place in caloric restriction. Seems to be due to restriction of single dietary substance, methionine. So right now, this is the theory that's leading to why caloric intake leads to increased longevity. And that's where I'll finish the semester. Just to review. Tomorrow, I'll review at the beginning of lab. You can work on your histology projects. Thursday, right here, we'll have your exam 3. Last year's is online. If you want, I'll have last year's keys. If you want to look at it, I'll have it in lab tomorrow. Friday, your hard copy of your lab board review. I'll have your exam 3 grade. And then Monday, we'll have your cumulative final at 3:30. So let me know if you got any questions.
What time do you want on
5 p.m.
Never mind. Shelby, go ahead if you got to. We can finish this. Go ahead.